different players are put into different situations even, or different schemes. Some, schemes fit a player better. So, I hate to sound like a broken record, but I got to see more from the kid. I think the jury's still out on him. The jury's still out, and they haven't reached a verdict yet. So let's see what he can do Saturday night. Definitely. The third preseason game, he probably won't play much at all. Maybe a little bit in the second half, because we'll probably see Breeze quite a bit against the Steelers. But that last preseason game against the Ravens, that's the one to watch, because I really think he's probably going to start the game, probably play the whole game, or most of it, and I think we'll really maybe finally get maybe a glimpse at least of where this kid is at. I don't think he's going to get cut. I've had fans asking me in the Facebook groups, do I think he'll get cut, or would they give up on him? No, I don't. I think he's going to stay. I think he'll carry the clipboard, even if if he doesn't beat out McCown, they're not going to cut him or get rid of him. He'll carry the clipboard another year and get another year's worth of experience under the tutelage and guidance of Drew Brees and Sean Payton. And we'll hit the reset button and see where he's at next year. But now I would definitely say if we're having this conversation again next year, where he's not the number 2 quarterback, solidly the number 2 quarterback behind Brees, assuming Brees comes back, which I don't think is a question that he will. Then we got to look at some other options, because then look, if this kid ain't the answer, if he's not the quote unquote the successor to Drew Brees, then who is? So that's going to be the next thing they'll have to address.
Yeah, and why spend a 3rd round pick on a guy who you're just going to have holding the clipboard? And you cannot have another unsuccessful high draft pick in the stable that the Saints decide to let go as well. So those are very good points that you guys are making, because if you look at the quarterbacks that were drafted in 2015, like you stated, Winston, Mariota, those guys are starting, but you have guys like Hunley, Petty, and Sims, and those guys are riding the bench right now, as well as Garrett Grayson. So there's not really many of those guys who are making an immediate impact in the league at this time, because they don't have the opportunities to do so. The guys ahead of them are doing pretty well. So, but will this guy become the heir apparent of Drew Brees? And remember, guys, Drew Brees wasn't this Drew Brees when he first started in San Diego as well.
Sure what?
All right, let's kind of turn to before we turn to defense, Coach, concerned me, my main man, Marcus Murphy, he had a great play, but he put the ball on the ground, and we cannot do that in this NFL. What is going on? How did he misread that punt?
Well, he didn't look it all the way in and have it secure. He was glancing a little bit faster than he needed to. And there's two main things in catching a punt. Number one, your hand position's got to be right, and that is with your fingers pointing upwards and not flat. You're making a basket, almost like I had a coach tell me one time, it's like you're reading the Bible, that you have your hands together, little fingers are touching, and your fingers are pointing up in the air and not out away from you to where it's a table and bouncing off. So his hand gets a little flat, and he doesn't quite look it all the way in. He's a little bit anxious, and that's how the ball gets away from him. If you remember, last year he was a prime punt returner until he fumbled the ball against the Tennessee Titans. Mm-hmm. And from that point on, he didn't return anymore. That's how important Sean Payton thinks that is. And I can identify with that. You want to know as a head coach that your guy's going to catch the ball in the air every time, and you don't have to agonize over whether he will or whether he won't. Because the next time that you leave it on the ground, you're not going to be able to pick it up and run 44 yards with it. Somebody's going to be right there and end up recovering. It has happened against the Titans last year. So it comes back to technique, attention to detail. When you look at them in practice, I know for back at mini camp and what Ed Daniels was telling me, who was up at training camp looking at him this year, but back with OTAs and mini camps when I could see him personally, he's very comfortable catching the ball. And he almost absorbs the ball, I call it. That's how you know whether somebody can really catch it or not. But he can't bobble it. He can't leave it on the ground because that's just, once again, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. If you look at his highlight films from when he was at Mizzou, right? I mean, outstanding kick returner, outstanding punt returner. I think he had in one game a couple that he returned for touchdowns. And I just wonder if, all right, we got this first one out the way. The rest of the season, hold on to the ball, son. That's what my hope is. The rest of the season, hold on to the ball, and we're good to go. You know, I was kind of pleased, man. I really, really was pleased because, Coach, you always say special teams need to be special. I believe the Saints special teams blocked very well this preseason game against the Patriots. I was very surprised.
Yeah, they did a lot of good things in the kicking game, and that was one of their big points of emphasis in the offseason to upgrade their athletic ability and speed in the linebacking area, in the secondary, of course, but adding people like Lasco as well, who shows a great knack, not only offensively, but in special teams as well. So that was certainly one of the positives that they're blocking in the kicking game, even though they had a couple of penalties in the kicking game as well. But hopefully the athleticism that the Saints tried to emphasize in both the draft and in free agency, that can really pay off for them in the kicking game.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to Lasco before we get off the air because Lasco – man, he's going to make it tough for that running back core and making a decision who stays and who goes, man. But hopefully we can be able to have some of this starting to kind of iron out and sift its way through within the next two games. So let's talk about this, Professor. You mentioned this guy on your program on Friday night, Crescent Edebali. He looks to be the guy that will complement Cam Jordan on the other end of the defensive line. Tell me, what are your thoughts? As we wait for him to unmute. Okay. All right. Let's go to you, Barry. There he goes.
Here I am, Paul. Sorry about that. These phones are just not these smartphones. I'm telling y'all, we really need to go back to the landlines because these smartphones are going to be a problem. Anyway, Adine.
Not too smart, are they?
Crescent Edebali has got to be the starter. There's nothing else to say in that area. Kyle, I'm going to be very brief. You don't have nobody else that is even in the same stratosphere at this time on the Saints team. This guy has to start. You just don't have anybody else. I don't even see how they even thought the other gentleman, Watson or whoever else they was looking at. I said this last year that this guy was the starter. I mean, this is the mistake the Saints keep doing year in, year out. They let Tyron Walker get out of here when he was better than Akeem Hicks. So it's not even any more a dispute. The man, is the one that hopefully that he can be the starter and come through and continue to play at the pace that he's playing in the regular season because Cam Jordan has to have some help. And with Sheldon Rankins being injured now, I was counting on Sheldon Rankins and Nick Fairley and an improved Tyler Davidson to be the starting four. Now I guess the starters will be Nick Fairley with Tyler Davidson and probably Bob Richardson. And hopefully that front four can get some type of a pass rush besides Cam. But with Edebali, I feel a lot better that he'll bring some relief. But the Saints still need a lot of help with their pass rush, in that area. Now, 2 sacks in the first quarter by he, and Laurinaitis was kind of assist on one of those sacks, was really great. So I feel very optimistic about Edebali and him starting. He's really someone to keep an eye on in terms of just continued to become a great pass rusher for the Saints, if not in the NFL, if he continues to develop. And can I backtrack 1 second? Go
ahead.
About for 1 second, as I keep stating, when you asked about Marcus Murphy fumbling and even Mark Ingram, I consistently keep saying that this is, yes, those guys' problem, but this to me is whatever the message the running back coach and the special teams coach are conveying, it's not working. You even saw it with Forbes. You've got to start looking at why is it that these players and whatever message, techniques that the coaches are teaching, they can't pick up on it. Because you're going to have to stand looking at what is going on that we have these same chronic problems, even with the penalties. Something is aloof between the Saints coaching staff and the message that they're conveying, and it's translating over to these young football players. And it's not working. It's because we're seeing the same chronic mistakes week in and week out. Same thing with the defensive line, Bill Johnson. We rotate players in and out over and over, year after year after year, and yet you still have Bill Johnson and Joe Vitt as assistant defense coach and defensive line coach. It's not working with some of these coaches in some capacity. And so what Coach Payton has to do is sit down and with his staff and find out what is going on that they're not picking up on what you're teaching, because we're having the same chronic mistakes. And that's my concern with the Saints defense, even with Dennis Allen now, because what you saw in those 3 quarters, second through fourth quarter, was the old Saints defense giving up a 56-yard blitz that didn't work, and the guy goes all the way, bad angling, and all of this stuff is going on. So something is not being conveyed over, and it's not getting to the young players. And Barry brought up a great point. I know now in the NFL versus the days for me, you, Dad, and Barry, where the players came in and grasped it rather quickly. I personally feel that young men now playing football and in the NBA are too distracted by social media and the extra spare time where they should be dedicated to their craft and to their industry and to their sport is now being wasted. Instead of studying film, they're studying other kinds of films on the internet. You guys get my drift when I say other film and all of that. And I think, I mean, I'll be honest, I've been guilty of that, so I'm not judging nobody, but I'm just saying, you in this industry, now these young men, to me, have much more distractionable objects or things now that are not allowing them to be focused. And what it's translating to in the game is these same chronic mistakes. Now, what was very just unbelievable to me, look at how smooth New England played the game in terms of how they played. So there's something that has to be credited to Bill Belichick that he gets over with his coaching staff that translates to the New England Patriots, even when they bring in rookies, undrafted players, and new people to their team. They did not look as sloppy as the Saints did.
That's a good point. I mean,
it comes back to discipline. That's discipline. I'm sure Coach could touch on a lot more, but to me, it sounds like a discipline issue. If you look at the Patriots are a model organization, year in, year out. They're always the same. They might not always win the championship of the world, but they're always going to be in the AFC championship game or close to it. I mean, they're just consistently. They're in everything they do. They're just consistent in all areas and all phases of their organization. On the field, off the field, whatever analogy you want to use. Those guys are consistently good at what they do, and to me, it's almost like a military organization. It's about self-discipline and getting the message across to the players. And there's a standard. There's a high standard that they're all held accountable to. Now, I don't want to say that the Saints aren't doing that, because maybe they are. Maybe the guys are just ignoring the message. I don't know. but for whatever reason, it just doesn't seem like the Saints